Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with mercy. Knowledge I offer my respectful obeisance unto him. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire. You can fulfill the desires of everyone. They are full of compassion, both of all Christians. Mukam karoti vacharam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurum Karanam. All right, dear devotees, Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much for joining. Please accept my humble obeisances. So today we will start chapter 8. Does somebody has any reflection or anything about chapter 7 before we start chapter 8?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I remember that Krishna in the beginning of chapter 7 was asking to hear about him, how to, he's explaining, he's giving his knowledge, and then he's saying that he's the origin of everything. And then he talked about that he's the source of both material and spiritual energies. And then all the three modes are controlled by him. So if we surrender to him, then we can overcome the three modes of material nature. And I think then he spoke about the 4 kinds of people who do not surrender to him, and then the 4 kinds of people who do surrender to him. And then he was talking about the demigod worship, how it is not proper, like Avidi Purva will come in chapter 9, I believe, but here also he is very parallel to chapter 9. He's also debugging the demigod worship is not the right worship. And then he's talking about, then I forgot the last part.
Then he was speaking about Icha Dvesha Samutena Dvanda Mohena Bharata, right? After the demigod worship, that how because of duality, like
duality part,
duality part.
Mataji, I have a question. So when I was reading about this demigod worship and everything, I noticed that Krishna uses 2 words which are translated into English as demigods, devas and devatas. What is the difference between deva and devata?
In deva and devata? So like in the verse, which verse was it? Like I think probably.
Well, I did not pay attention, but I noticed that in some verses he says deva, and in some verses he says devata. So
in Sanskrit, right?
In Sanskrit, yes, and both are translated as the demigod. So I mean, I can look maybe.
One second. And our message with second.
But is there any difference?
Demigod is in English, and Devata is in Hindi and Sanskrit, right?
Well, I don't know Hindi, but it's definitely the Sanskrit was saying in one verse was saying Deva and another one was saying Devata. So I was wondering what.
I think it's just both same. It's just like the subject and object, that kind of a thing is like that. It's just like you use some adjectives kind of thing. So it's just like that. Deva.
It's just like a different ending, but it's the same root.
Yeah, it's the same root. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so should we start the chapter 8? Because Prabhu gave the summary of chapter 7. Yeah, and in the end, what was the end of chapter 7? Yeah, that Brahman, that topic came, right? Brahman. So in the chapter 7th, in the end, Arjuna was speaking about that, and Krishna actually in the last part he spoke about bewilderment and freedom by knowing Krishna, right? That's what he told in the end of the chapter 7. Then now 8th chapter, Arjuna is going to start asking question. Now he is going to inquire about the 6 items from Krishna. Because in 7th chapter and Krishna used the items Brahman, Adhyatma, Karma, Adibhuta, Adideva, and Adi Yajna. These items Krishna used in the end of chapter 7. So Arjuna is going to ask about those, what are these actually? He wants Krishna to explain in chapter 8. And chapter 8 is really, again, another beautiful chapter. 8 is like attaining the supreme. So it really actually focuses on how one should always remember Krishna, right? So there is that, because there are so many rules, regulations, and all that stuff is there, but ultimately the essence is that one should always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, right? Sarve vidhi nishedashyor etayor kinkara समर्तव्य सततम विष्णुर विस्मर्तव्यो न जातुजित सर्वे विधि निषेधाश्योर एतयोरे किंकरा. So that is the sense of all the rules and regulations, prohibitions, and all that. So that is what in this chapter 8 we will see that how remembering, we should always remember Krishna and never forget him, because that's how only we can remember him at the end of our lives. Otherwise we will not be able to remember him. So with that, let us begin chapter 8. 1 second, let me share my screen. Somebody wants to start can start. In the meantime, I'll share my screen. Someone wants to start?
I can start, Mataji.
Go ahead, yeah.
Chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, Arjun Uvacha, Kim Tad Brahma, Kim Adhyatmam, Kim Karma Purushottam. Yeah. Adibhutam cha ki. Sorry, Mataji. It's getting the echo. Adibhutam cha kim proktam, adhidaivam kim uchyate. Translation unpurported by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arjun inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjun, beginning with what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the supreme absolute truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjun also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjun has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottam, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority, able to give definitive answers. Haribol.
Yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, Mataji, is straightforward that Arjun, based on the last chapter, he heard these words Brahman, self, Atma, and what is the karma, and who are the devatas, and what is material manifestation. So he's asking, and he's addressing him as Purushottam. So he's not, because in the second chapter he is surrendered to him and he has accepted him as the guru, and now he's also come to that realization that Krishna is the supreme person. So he's addressing him as Purushottam. And there in the purport, Prabhupada is mentioning that Brahman is the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are the three aspects of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahman is the effulgence, which is also, and sometimes the soul is also called the Brahman. So that's one opposite.
And Adhyatam, the other question he asked is Adhyatam. So like Arjuna wants to clarify, is it talking about the gross body or it is talking about the subtle body? It is talking about the mind, senses, or the body, or the soul, what it is talking about. Karma, actually it could be fruitive activity or spiritual activity. And why? If they are equivalent, why should he fight? So he's kind of having that internal dialogue in between, that okay, what do you mean by this? Is it fruitive activity or spiritual activity? And if they are equivalent, then why should he fight? And then Adibhuta, is it gross or physical things is Krishna referring to, such as parts and the bodies of living entity, or what he is asking about? And Adideva, governors of demigods, a demigod or Virat Purusha, right? And Adi Agna, the identity of one who is ultimately worshipped by the performance of sacrifice. So is it Vishnu or a demigod? So basically Arjuna wants to make that clarified, as because Krishna spoke in the end. And whoever it is, where is it in the body? Okay, so let's go to the next verse.
I have questions in regards to this verse.
Yeah,
so
yes.
I'm getting confused with the translation over here. For example, in the verse
One second, let me go back. Yeah.
So Adhi Atman is translated here as the self. However, you know why Arjuna is asking about Adhi Atman, because he heard it in the 29th verse of the previous chapter, and where Adhi Atman is translated as transcendental.
Yeah.
So in one verse, Adhi Atman is translated as transcendental, and another one is translated as the self. As far as I understand, Adhi means above, like above something, and like Adhi Atman is some like superior soul or above the soul, because for example, in verse 30 of the previous chapter, Krishna says that those yogis who see me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods, and as the one sustaining all sacrifices. So, for example, here, Adhi Daivam translates as the demigods. However, in verse 30, it translates as the underlying principle of demigods.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm confused by the
translation. Yeah. Mataji, Sanskrit is a very precise and vast language. So actually speaking, so when Krishna Prabhupada is translating, so in the context of the verse and in the context of Bhagavad Gita, overall, taking the overall context of the word, that is how it is used. Like, for example, this gives me in how much time, wherever this word Adhyatmam come, what are the meanings? So in as you said, in 729, it is translated as transcendental, and in Bhagavad Gita 1 and 8.1 and 8.3, it is considered as self. And then in Bhagavatam, it is translated as the controlled entities. And in 4th canto, it is translated as narration of self-realization, the overseer of all causes and effects. So basically, this is the super soul, right? And in another, her body, and then called Adhyatam. So basically, based on the, so actually, as I was saying, and as in the purport also, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that Atma can refer to one's mind, body, or even the senses sometimes, or the soul, sorry. It can refer to body, soul, or mind. So depending upon the context in the verse, that is the way it is used. That is what I have heard, and that is why Arjuna is also asking him that question, so that Krishna can answer. And when we will hear the answers, then we will know what it is actually. Is that okay, Gayatri Mataji?
If it is okay, well, it's not very clear, but
Well,
the thing is that even by for example, here, to me, for example, what is demigods as a translation, it doesn't make sense to me, because here Krishna says that the yogi who sees me as the underlying principle of demigods, or like who is above all demigods, why would Arjuna ask him who are demigods? And then Krishna in the verse number 4, he doesn't tell him who are demigods. He's actually explaining to them, to Arjuna, who is above demigods. I mean, that's why this translation is I don't know, it's not. I think it should not be demigods. It should be as it was written in the verse 30, which is the one underlying all the demigods, basically the one who holds all of them, like the one who is above all them.
Mm-hmm. So let's read further, and then maybe some clarity will come. We will see. But whatever I have heard, I just told you, right? Yeah, Adi Devam actually could be governor of demigods. Actually,
yeah, because Adhi means above, right?
Yeah. And Deva is demigod. So basically, actually, Srila Prabhupada has translated it as demigods. But if we actually go through the commentaries of the Acharyas, so they explain that Arjuna is asking this Adideva because he wants to really understand Krishna. What is he meaning by governor of demigods, or he's asking about demigods, or he's asking about Virat Purusha. So that is what the Acharyas say, like Baldev Vidyabhushan and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So when we will see the answers by Krishna, then things will become a little clearer, hopefully. So let's go through and see what happens, right? And otherwise, we will see what more further in depth how we will go. Okay.
Hare Krishna Mataji, is it this not these three things, Adhyatma, Adibhuta, and Adideva, the three material, the miseries, the cause of miseries, right? This is the three, like we say Adhyatma is, it's inflicted on by me.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adidevam is, it's conflicted by
the demigods.
The demigods, and then Adibhuta is somebody who's by the living entities.
It's a little slightly different than that. So let's see what Krishna says.
Okay.
Yeah. That means something like it's not exactly, and it's not not that, means it's somewhere mix up of the things.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's.
Bhagavati Prabhu, and where did you take what you just said? Where is this from?
It's usually, I think it's many places, right? In what the three moments.
Yeah. Three causes of misery: adhyatmika klesha, adibhotika klesha, adidevika kleshas, right? The miseries, three kinds of miseries that living entity goes through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's something, yes, and not means it's much more than that, like, and it's somewhere in second canto Srimad Bhagavatam also. Okay, so let's see further, and then some clarity will come, hopefully. Let's go ahead. Someone wants to read the next verse?
I can read, Mataji.
Go ahead, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji.
Chapter 8, verse number 2. Adhiyagnaha katham ko atra dehe asmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katham gneyo asti nityatmabhya. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Purport. Lord of sacrifice may refer to either Indra or Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Brahma and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by Yagna performances, but here Arjuna asks who is actually the Lord of Yagna and how the Lord is residing within the body of the living entity. Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudana because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna because Arjuna is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addresses him as Madhusudana so that Krishna might kill the demoniac doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Now, the word prayana kale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjuna is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. What should be their position at that final moment? At the time of death, all the bodily functions are disturbed and the mind is not in a proper condition. Thus, disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Kurushekara, a great devotee, prays, "My dear Lord, just now I am quite healthy and it is better that I die immediately, so that the swan of my mind can seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet." The metaphor is used because the swan, a bird of the water, takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flowers. Its sporting proclivity is to enter the lotus flower. Maharaj Kulasekar says to the Lord, "Now my mind is undisturbed and am I quite healthy, and if I die immediately thinking of your lotus feet, then I am sure that my performance of your devotional service will become perfect. But if I have to wait for my natural death, then I do not know what will happen. Because at that time the bodily functions will be disturbed, my throat will be choked up, and I do not know whether I shall be able to chant your name. Better let me die immediately." Arjuna, Arjuna questions how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such a time. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Yeah, Mataji, you want to share something?
Yeah, so here Arjuna further asks Lord Sri Krishna two questions: who is the Lord of sacrifice, and what is the position of a person who engage in devotional service at the time of death? So he's asking, even the Vishnu is the uh, uh, chief of the demigods, and the Indra is the administrator of demigods. So who is the Lord of the sacrifice? Either Vishnu or Indra. And also here in this verse, Arjuna addressed Krishna as the Madhusudana. So why? Because Arjuna even know Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and Arjuna is a devotee of Krishna, but he has doubts. So Arjuna wants Krishna to kill his the doubts of demons from his mind. And in third paragraph, Arjuna asking about the position of a person who is always engaged in Krishna conscious activities. What is that? What is their final moment? Because at the time of death, our bodily functions are very disturbed. Our mind is not properly working. So what will happen? And he gave the example of Maharaj Guru Shekhara. He is a great devotee of the Lord, and he said at the like I am right now is quite healthy, and it's better if I immediately so that I can enter into the lotus feet of Krishna. So yeah, that final question. Arjuna asking Krishna.
Yeah. So
how can person fix his mind at the time of death?
Yeah. So because that Krishna in the previous chapters has again and again asked Arjuna to remember him, like, do your duty, right? Do your duty, like that Krishna has told again and again. So now Arjuna is kind of, okay, if I fight, how am I going to, remember him? So he's asking all these question. And basically for Supreme Lord, this Adi Yagna word is used. Adi Yagna in third chapter also we heard Yagna Purusha, right? Who is the to whom to do all the, for whom to do all the sacrifice for, right? So basically this purport Srila Prabhupada is actually focusing on that all the bodily functions, they will not be, mind will be very disturbed. So how can we remember Krishna at the time of death? So actually for Kali Yuga, the process is chanting. The main Yuga Dharma is chanting of the holy name. So if we just do lip deep chanting, then it will be hard for us to remember the holy name at the time of when the bodily functions, the mind and the body, tongue and the mind and everything stops working. So we need to practice chanting from the heart, because the heart function is the one which remains, right? Yeah. All right. So let's see when Krishna starts giving answer. If somebody wants to add something or say something, please go ahead.
One thing, Mataji, like in today's group, we discussed, like Shakti Prabhuji said that, like scientifically it has been proven now that at the end of the life,
What? Say that again.
like in end of the life, when the one person was in MRI and that time he died, so the CT scan or like whatever the
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
they said that the memory, restored memories, flashes in front of the
Yeah. The whole, everything flashes through like a movie.
yeah.
Yes.
So it's like Krishna is showing us what we did in the entire life.
Yeah. So that's why, like, if our attachment to Krishna happens, then because okay, and then everything passes through like a movie, but whatever we are most attached to, that will be prominent at that time. Right? So that is why that attachment to Krishna has to happen.
Yes.
And the bodily functions are going to stop. So then if we are chanting deep and from the mind, then it will not be functioning, as a mind and the body will not function. So then we should chant from the heart. So yeah.
I also have a question. So
Yes, ma'am.
that's again regards translation. So here with Sanskrit, niyata atma bhi, by the self-controlled. And Prabhupada translates by the self-controlled, he says those engaged in devotional service. I mean, that's a lot of that's a lot of interpretation, I think.
Actually Srila Prabhupada, I mean, we have to see not only the word to word kind of a thing, but when Srila Prabhupada translated all these verses of Bhagavad Gita, he did it in the whole context of Bhagavad Gita. Basically, what is the essence message of Bhagavad Gita is devotional services, right? The essence message of Bhagavad Gita is devotional service, and Srila Prabhupada tried to bring bhakti in each and everything, no matter what it is in Bhagavad Gita. And there is a pastime of Advaitacharya with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Advaitacharya actually was fasting because he was not able to see bhakti in chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita, in one of the verses, or the whole chapter Bhagavad Gita 11th chapter, where Krishna is showing his universal form. So he fasted because he was not able to see bhakti in that, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed to Advaitacharya universal form. So what does that interpretation means? That actually Bhagavad Gita, everything is about bhakti, about devotional services. It is actually, even though it is spoken in different way, but ultimately the core message of Bhagavad Gita is to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. And that is why certain messages Krishna repeated, like 9:34 and 18th chapter verse 65, Man manabhav mad bhakto madhyaya mam namasuru, right? That is bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada actually, wherever he found an opportunity, he brought those things to devotional service. And another thing also we can say that somebody who is self-controlled, they will definitely engage in devotional service, right?
Well, if we are speaking about the yogi, which basically we see the line from the chapter 6, it goes to the chapter 7. The Lord, which is explained in the chapter 7, is the one that yogi meditates on, Paramatma. Basically, chapter 7 describes Paramatma, not Krishna himself. So if we see the line from chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8, chapter 8 is continuing the explanation for the yogi. So by the self-controlled, it's for the one, it's for that yogi.
Oh,
chapter number 6.
Not really, Mataji. I mean, actually, 7th chapter, 8th chapter, they have the bhakti content in them. I mean, because the middle 6 chapters, we know 7 to 12 are bhakti. So, okay, let's go back to 647. 647, actually speaking, what is he saying? So, okay, yogi. So once the yogi is mature, then they engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Actually, 1 second, let me go to 647. If you look at the verse
I
carefully,
actually remember this verse, and they don't have even the word bhakti in it. Again, the translation is the interpretation.
It's not
It's
there.
yukta tamah. Look, it's or what was it? Bhajate. I mean,
Yes, I agree with you, Mataji, but like what is the meaning of yoga actually? Yoga means connecting with the Supreme, right? That is the meaning of
in any form. I mean, it can be even with the Lord Paramatma. I mean, the chapter number 7 is completely about the Paramatma, the one Krishna says, that I'm a taste of water, that I'm inside of everything. He's not, with his friends, like chasing the cows over there, right? He is in the form of Paramatma in each ingredient of the of this universe.
Yes.
So, and that's Paramatma is something that a yogi meditates on, not the devotees. And I actually, in this, so far, I only found the word bhakta in one sentence. Everywhere else, it's either yukta vairagya, which is translated as a transcendental service, or something else. There is no word bhakti.
Yeah, but again, yes, what you are saying is correct. But at the same time, we have to understand Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission. When we are reading his text, we need to understand the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada. And what is the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada is engage, because, okay, ultimately Bhakti Yoga is the topmost, right? Without Bhakti Yoga, even the yogi or the impersonalist, they cannot attain the goal, right? Without the tinge of bhakti, they cannot, right? So and Srila Prabhupada, in wherever it is, so even in Karma Yoga section from 1 to 6, he is speaking about devotional service, because bhakti is the essence of this Bhagavad Gita. So he is speaking in context. So means we cannot take one verse of Bhagavad Gita and just stand make the interpretation. So what Srila Prabhupada has done, each and every verse, he has correlated it with the essence of Bhagavad Gita, so that if we don't read the whole Bhagavad Gita, if we read just one thing, still we get the essence. So he is speaking in the context of the essence of Bhagavad. Like we say, what is that? Paribhasya Sutra of a book, right? And all the verses should actually make that use, go to that Paribhasya Sutra of Bhagavad Gita, basically. And same way in Srimad Bhagavatam, the Paribhasya Sutra is Ete Chamsa Kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swam. So each and every verse of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, if the meaning is coming something like different, then still it should be understood in the context of the Paribhasya Sutra of that book. So Bhagavad Gita's essence is bhakti. So each and every verse should be actually taking us to that essence, not somewhere else. So that is what Srila Prabhupada has done for us. And another thing, we are trying to put our intellect in understanding the words and all. And anything related to bhakti is not just intellect. it is Krishna will reveal depending upon our like there is that pastime of Arjuna Acharya, right? Yoga Kshema Vahamiham, that verse when he read in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, and he said, oh, how can Krishna carry everything to his devotee? And he crossed that line actually. And then
Mataji, what is this discussion all about? I'm confused. Is it by the seventh chapter?
Okay. It is about Srila Prabhupada translating verses, and Gayatri Mataji is saying that Krishna in 7th chapter is speaking, 6th chapter, 7th chapter is speaking about yoga, and he's speaking about yogis who meditate on Paramatma, and Srila Prabhupada is translating things as devotional service, like in this verse that I have opened here. This devotional service, that this one. Niyat Atma is by the self-controlled, but in the translation of the verse, he is speaking about devotional service.
Got it, Mataji. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so Gayatri Mataji, that is what Srila Prabhupada is giving us, each and everything based on this essence of Bhagavad Gita, which is devotional service. And we cannot understand all these things by our intellect. I mean, what is that sound? Yeah, we can just, I mean, whatever way we want to take it, we take it. I mean, depending upon how much.
Mataji, I feel Krishna's intention is also like that. He's explaining everything, but his ultimate intention is to.
Because actually he's explaining. Because there are different types of people who are not at a level where they can directly engage in devotional service of the Lord, right? So in that sense, he's speaking about everything, but then in the end, he's speaking about the essence, right? And Srila Prabhupada, for our benefit or for whatever reason, he is giving us each and every verse so that it relates to the essence of Bhagavad Gita. And that is what actually...
For section 1 in chapter 7 is knowing about Krishna, and the section 2 is not knowing Krishna. So how do we know Krishna? It is a Atma or Paramatma, whatever it is. But in 7th chapter is establishing a way for the people who are not in the process to understand, right, Mataji? So that is the first step in understanding that he is everywhere and everything is him, and so he's trying to establish that in the 7th chapter.
Yeah.
So ultimately everything is boiling down, and the path is bringing it up to a point where it has to end in devotional service.
Yeah. So should we continue?
Yes, you can continue.
Yeah. I mean, it will take, and actually I think I didn't get a chance to hear Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So generally he actually explains these things. So if I get a chance, I tried, but I didn't get any time to hear sitting and peacefully hearing him, because generally he gives all these explanations, Mataji. So if you get a chance, you can hear also, and then we can further discuss. But my I mean, my knowledge is very, very limited. So whatever I understand, I explained that much. And I am also learning with all of you. So okay. So should we continue to
Mataji.
Yeah, go ahead.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Swabhavo Dhyatmam Uchyata Bhuta Bhava Karo Visarga Karma Sangita. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahm. Mataji, is it Brahman or Brahman?
Brahman, Brahman,
This is
Brahman,
Brahman.
Brahman.
Okay. The indestructible transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma or fruitive activities. Purpose. Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman, there is Par Brahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Par Brahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the lord of matter. But in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but he is never called Para-Brahman. The living entity Jivatma takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter, and sometimes he identifies himself with a superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy. According to his identification with material or spiritual nature, he receives a material or spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 400,000 species of life, but in spiritual nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is manifested sometimes as a man, demigod, animal, beast, birds, etc. According to his karma, to attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, yagna, but when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. This process is called karma. The Chandogya Upanishad describes the Vedic sacrificial process. On the sacrificial altar, 5 kinds of offerings are made into 5 kinds of fire. The 5 kinds of fire are conceived of as the heavenly planets, clouds, the earth, man and woman, and the 5 kinds of sacrificed offerings are faith, the enjoyer on the moon, rain, grains, and semen. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity once again attains the human form to perform sacrifice and so repeat the same cycle. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and thereby prepares himself to return to Godhead. Impersonalist commentators on the Bhagavad Gita unreasonably assume that Brahman takes the form of Jiva in the material world. And to substantiate this, they refer to chapter 15, verse 7 of the Gita. But in the verse, the Lord also speaks of the living entity as an eternal fragment of myself, the fragment of God. The living entity may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Parabrahma, the Supreme Lord.
You want to say something?
It's very interesting. So it's explaining like the Brahman is like the Jivas that we are, and the Parabrahma is the Krishna, the Supreme Personality. And how depending on our karmas we take different material bodies, and the process of like the the Upanishad, the Chand Yoga describes how one can sacrifices yagya and attain a demigod like the heavenly planet bodies, and then eventually they all have to fall down and come as a human again. And also Srila Prabhupada is explaining how the impersonalists commentary has been like voided, that they believe that even Krishna himself comes as a jiva on material world, which is not acceptable because he is Param Brahma, and he doesn't take a material body, he comes himself as in a spiritual body. So the difference between the Brahman and the Param Brahma is being, so that's
Yeah. Yeah, so basically three things he described here. Brahman is actually the spirit soul, and Adhyatam is actually the constitutional nature of the living entity, which is to serve Krishna. And karma is the conditioned activities that we do that produce reaction and thus binds the living entity to a material body. So that is karma. The real nature of jiva is the adhyatma, which is adhyatam, which is to eternally serve. In material consciousness, our nature, we try to be the lord of matter, but the spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, our position is to serve Krishna. So then in the middle of the purport, Srila Prabhupada described this Chandogya Upanishad thing, this Chandogya Upanishad, right? Yeah. So this part is actually the actions that give us a material human body, the karma thing basically that is described. So Srila Prabhupada described the fire, Panchagni, like five fires he described. The offering, the five fires, like 4 heavenly planets, clouds, earth, man and women, right? And then the 5 other things he described was offerings were like faith, enjoyer, and the rain, grains and semen, right? So those, I mean, this is a philosophical kind of a thing that is beyond my understanding, but this is how, like he described here, in this process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifice to attain specific heavenly planet and consequently reaches there. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain. So actually many times when there is rain as well as sun is shining, then they say that the living entities are falling down. Then takes on the form of grain. So rain, like we know that grains come from rain, we heard in 3rd chapter, that cycle. And the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity once again attains a human form to perform sacrifice and to repeat the same cycle. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. So that is actually karma. That is what happens. So, and the last part is Par Brahman and Brahman. So I know it again may have a lot of confusion and questions, but if anybody wants to add something or say something, please go ahead.
I want to ask, so when we hear the word Brahma, is it spelled differently from that word Brahman, where the aspect of the absolute truth, where everyone wants, not everyone, but some individuals want to?
Yeah, so Brahma, Brahma is spelled as Brahma, Brahma. Brahma.
I'm not talking about the English in Sanskrit. Is it the same root? Is it only?
Yeah, same. Brahma. Yeah, same. Brahma, Brahman, Brahma, Brahman. Yes.
So how is it Krishna says that living entity is Brahman, if Brahman is this aspect of the?
Oh, no. So yeah, so why he's saying that, like, what does it mean here? What does Brahman means? Which is eternal actually. Brahman is like eternal. The characteristic of the spirit soul is also eternal, right? In that sense, he's saying it is a living entity is Brahman.
Eternal. So Brahman also means eternal.
Yeah, Brahman is also eternal, like Brahma Jyoti, right? Brahma Jyoti and Brahman, they are kind of similar kind of thing. Brahman and Brahma Jyoti. And Brahma Jyoti is also eternal, right? Which is the effulgence of the body of the Supreme Lord.
Okay, and the word Brahma as the, Lord Brahma,
Lord
his
Brahma,
name
yeah.
is the same thing? His name has the same root?
It's because it is probably because he is born directly. He is not born like us. He is born from the navel of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, he is Brahma. And also because he is the first living entity, basically. So Brahma, like in that sense also Brahma is used.
Okay, and what about this, the highest, this caste, like we have Kshatriya and
Brahmanas.
Brahmanas, are they also from the same thing, from the same root?
Kind of like, okay, so yeah, let me tell you what it is. Brahmana means who knows about Brahman. Brahmana means who knows about Brahman. In sense, Brahmana is used, right?
I also wanted to ask that people who said Aham Brahmasmi, that means I am the spirit soul, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people, it depends on with what consciousness they're saying. It is the consciousness behind their saying. So they can also say that I am the supreme impersonal Brahman, right? They can also think of that. But I am not supreme Brahman. I am the Jiva who is the part and parcel of Par Brahman.
Yeah. So many times Brahman we call it, which is the effulgent. Sometimes Brahman is used for Atma, the Jiva, right? Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out because Gayatri Mataji asked. Sometimes it is used for Jiva, sometimes it's used for the Parabrahman, and Brahman are used in the same context.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and what is the difference between just Atma and Adhyatma? What is the difference between Atma?
So here Adhyatma in this verse, Adhyatma is described as the constitutional nature of the living entity, right? In this verse, Adhyatma is described as the constitutional nature of the living entity, which is to serve Krishna, Adhyatam, right? That is what Krishna is. So means Adhyatam means what actually that real function of Atma, Adhyatam.
Okay, and what is the difference?
So it can also be think about in this way, like basically this prefix adhya means the originality kind of a thing, right? Adhyatam. So Atma means living entities, and Adhya means what is my original characteristics and nature of that Atma, right? In that sense also we can think of it.
Okay, and the last question. So so the verse also calls, like, there are the words Jiva. How is Jiva different from Atma? Or is it the same?
It's just the same. So Jiva, synonym. It's kind of synonym, but at the same time, sometimes Jiva can be considered as conditioned Jiva or liberated Jiva. Like, meaning, then again, that Jiva word can be in the context. Same way Atma can be in the context, because Atma sometimes is used for mind, sometimes used for body, sometimes used for soul, right? Depending upon what context we are, the meaning can be taken differently. Yeah, because we say Jivatma, right? We also say Jivatma.
So what does Jivatma mean? How is Jiva Atma and Jivatma, how is it different?
Means like that, then in the sense that one is the Supreme Lord, Supreme Soul, and then one is the tiny living entity, that Jivatma and Atma. In that comparison context, it can be used Jivatma, Paramatma.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, these are technical. All right, dear devotees, it's 8:28. I think if anybody has anything, quickly please share. Otherwise, we will chant one round. Hari Bol, everyone. Oh, Kalpana Mata, you are there. Hari Bol. Wow, it must be 6 o'clock for you now.